Hello and welcome to Fresh Perspectives. My name is Gail, and my guest today is Judy Einach, who just happens to be running for New York State Assembly. Thank you for coming on, Judy.
Thank you for inviting me.
Now, let's tell us something about yourself before we move on to some of the other subjects.
Well, I used to come when I was a little kid to Chautauqua Lake every summer with my parents. I learned to swim and I learned to fish in Chautauqua Lake. Then I was mostly raised in Buffalo, New York, and then afterwards I lived around the United States in different cities, and recently in 2010 came back to Chautauqua County to retire. I live in Westfield now, but I'm not retiring.
Oh, okay. You've decided to do something else. What kind of an education do you have?
Well, I have a master's from the Harvard Graduate School of Education, where I focused my studies on community problem solving and decision making at the time, especially around youth issues.
Oh, okay. And you did work in that field then over the years?
Well, I worked in a number of fields. I for the most part, I managed not-for-profits.
Oh,
and
okay.
Did various things in different not-for-profits, which has given me a broad range of experience that I think fits beautifully with being able to represent Chautauqua County in the New York State Assembly.
Oh, good. Now, we're not going to keep you guys waiting too long because we've got something sitting in front of the table. Uh-oh, it's not really showing up too good.
It'll be
I guess
fine.
maybe we should have left it forward.
Well, it's okay. They'll fix it.
Okay, Judy brought something really big in, a big fish. And where did this fish come from?
Well, this fish was positioned outside Lakeshore Center for the Arts in Westfield, which is located in the Presbyterian Church. But this fish is symbolic of a total of 80 fish that are all over Westfield. This is an initiative that was started by the Chamber of Commerce in Westfield. Sue Crawford Poster was responsible for this, and various artists and people who just wanted to have fun each took a fish or more than one fish and decorated them, and now they're all over Westfield and they're just like jewelry in the town.
It looks like the scales are made out of CDs or DVDs.
I believe that's exactly what they are. And this fish was done by Jody Wilmerth and Judy Washington.
Oh.
Yep. And that's what they did. This is an incredible piece of work. The fish are amazing. One is better than the other, and somehow there's a contest going on to choose the top fish. I don't know how people are going to choose. They're beautiful fish.
Yeah, this one is certainly extraordinary. Yeah, it's just really extraordinary.
Some of them are on porches. They're hanging on chains, and I saw one online this morning. The whole garden was designed to complement the fish. It's just beautiful what people have thought of. There's so much thought that went into this and so much effort. It's part of the revitalization of Westfield, which is one village town that is in line with the whole revitalization of small communities across America. And it's the people who live in these communities who are getting together and saying, you know what, it's time that we did something about these places where we live that have degraded
Right.
over the years, and they're doing it. They're bringing it back.
Well, there were little communities in the county that have kind of gone down into just being neighborhoods, and Summerdale is one of them. You know where I mean, right?
Summerdale?
Summerdale is between Mayville and Sherman.
Okay.
They used to have a...
Sorry, Summerdale. I'll come visit.
It's like they had a gas station and a grocery store, and my understanding many years ago, one of those old one-room schoolhouses and things like that, and now it's pretty much just a neighborhood.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So, and there's a few other places like that around Chautauqua County that are like that,
Yeah.
like Stedman. I think there was more to Stedman at one time.
Yeah, well, you're talking about some very small communities.
Yeah.
And then there are other larger communities like Brockton and Sherman and that all have unique features that need to be brought out again.
Yeah.
And
yeah, Sherman has still the old-fashioned boardwalks instead of sidewalks like from the Old West and like that.
That's exactly right. That makes Sherman one of my favorite towns.
It is fun. One time when we were going through Sherman to get on the thruway, to Erie to go visit a relative that was in the hospital, I remember, and this was like, we're driving through Sherman, making the left turn there, and there was like some people dressed up in costumes. I think it was between Thanksgiving and Christmas, maybe. And there was one person dressed like Santa Claus, but then there was another one that was dressed like a cow. And they had these big smiles on their faces. And, they looked so happy to be dressed up in these costumes.
I hope that cow was wearing lipstick.
Well, I think it was a man, actually.
No, not the cow. That would have been a bull.
Oh.
It doesn't matter who was inside it.
Oh, okay. So anyway, we had a good chuckle about that as we drove by. They looked so cute out there.
Yeah.
So now, why did you decide to run for New York State Assembly?
Well, it wasn't on my list of things to do, my bucket list. But I was asked by Norm Green to run.
Oh, really?
Yes. And I thought about it long and hard. I didn't get back to him for about a month.
Oh.
I really did think seriously about it and everything it entails and the change it would make in my life when I win.
And you will.
Thank you. Going to try hard. And I thought, you know what? I do have what it takes to be a good assembly member and a good representative of this county. And I love meeting people. I love listening to what people have to say. I love traveling the county. And I like the whole thought process that goes into making the rules, if you will, or the laws by which we agree to live as residents of the state of New York. And sometimes I think having somebody representing us who's an attorney may not be the best person to help make the laws. The Assembly has enough attorneys and it's got enough access to legal help in order to properly put laws into legalese. But sometimes I think it's more important to have people who have been out in the world working with people and who really understand the needs of human beings and the needs of communities so that our laws get written in a way that that takes life into account.
Right. I remember when she was still alive, an elderly aunt of mine saying something about, you know, the different politicians and things, and the amount of money that they earn, you know, and she was saying that one of them said something about, well, I think it might have had something to do with maybe if they could help with the tax situation, if they would take a lower paycheck, maybe. Maybe they earn way more than enough than they really need. And she said this one politician, and I can't remember which one it was, this was quite a few years ago, that she told me this, that his response was something about, well, they know how to live without a lot of money, and we don't.
The politician
Yeah.
didn't know how to live without a lot of money?
I guess, you know.
Well, it's possible. I mean, you look at who's in office in many cases, especially at the federal level. It's very hard to run for political office at the federal level if you don't have access to wealth. So, and I know from having been at a place like Harvard, there's seduction that goes on in a very wealthy environment, and you forget about the problems of other human beings who are in the majority.
Right, right.
I can tell you this, that I've been a single mom most of my adult life, and there have been times when finding 2 nickels to rub together has not been easy. I have been told by somebody who is very financially savvy that I'm the most resourceful woman he ever met. He was an accountant. I can tell you also that I've run nonprofits, 2 in particular, that were in financial crisis when I took over the job, and I pulled them out of that through very, very careful money management. And personally, since I was in charge, if it was a question of who got paid, because they were truly in bad shape, I'm the one who let my paycheck slide until we were better positioned to start paying me back pay, because that's fair, and get me up to date. But never would I let an employee go without being paid. So,
yeah, sometimes, sometimes, things are important enough you're willing to do that. I mean, I have 2 volunteer jobs, and this program is one of them, but if something's important enough and you're passionate enough about it, you are willing to do it without getting paid. Yeah.
And with regard to the state legislature, those in Chautauqua County, it's public knowledge what the salary is. The base pay is, and I'll be very open about this, I had nothing to do with setting it. The base pay is $79,500, and it's considered a part-time job. And now in Chautauqua County and in other rural counties in the state, that's a very comfortable income.
Right,
And
it is.
for me to be able to be a public servant and be paid well for it would be such an honor. I would be so humbled by that. It would be the crowning point of my career. And I would appreciate it so much. I would never ever forget what I owe the voters who give me that opportunity. But in a place like New York City, that same amount of money goes a lot shorter distance.
Right,
than
it does.
So it's very, we have to be very careful when we talk about compensation for public servants. Now, I will say, judges in Chautauqua County, I'm surprised how little they make.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. They either have to be retired and comfortable enough, or they have to have other jobs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you can't make blanket statements. And the other thing about compensation for public servants, if you will, you can call them elected officials, or you can call them, some of them, politicians. Hope you don't call me a politician, but I preferred to be called a public servant, and how to think of myself like that has a very different meaning. One of the reasons we want to compensate people well to do these jobs is so that they really do them full-time rather than part-time.
Oh, yeah.
And so that they don't need to go and get outside income, because that's the potential for corruption.
Oh.
And if we need to get corruption out of anywhere, we need to get it out of New York State government.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yeah. Now, Republican men that are politicians or public servants, whichever you want to call them, I'm picking up on things that they are saying that lead me to believe that they're trying to do away with women's rights. Now, you hear a lot about the abortion thing, but it sounds to me like they're even trying to do away with birth control in general, some of them. And I remember, who was it that was running for president where Paul Ryan was his running mate? I can't remember. He was running for president and I can't even remember his name. Do you?
Oh.
Yeah, you know, it was the second time Barack Obama was running. You don't remember his name
Well, I'm
either.
not a politician.
You know, so.
But I know it.
Well,
it was in the last election. Yeah, the one before.
The last time that
you're right.
Barack Obama had run, and it's no wonder that he won again. You know, with the kind of
How
stuff.
easily the losers are forgotten.
Yeah. So anyway, I remember Paul Ryan making some comment about they didn't want it to be legal for a woman to have an abortion if she was raped, and he said something about, oh, you can't get pregnant from being raped, and I'm thinking, where did he? What health class was he in? You know, I mean.
Yeah.
So, but you know, they start taking away things like reproductive rights, and the next thing you know, they're going to be taking away our right to vote, and I mean, just go sort of backwards.
Well, those are very reactionary positions, and I have often thought and said out loud a few times that I believe that with people like Tom Reed and even my opponent, their positions on women's rights lead me to believe that if suffrage were up for a vote today,
Instead of years ago.
yeah, almost 100 years ago, that we would not have the right to vote as women. These strains of thinking in American history, U.S. history, stay alive for a very, very, very long time. And so we need to be vigilant about protecting and expanding our rights. And you can go online and you can look at the voting record. It's public. It's there for the public. We can go online and look and see that how our representatives are voting. And my opponent is not particularly good on women's rights, minority rights.
Apparently, somebody handed me a piece of paper a moment ago with the name Mitt Romney on it.
Yeah,
so
that would work.
Maybe that was who was running for president.
That could have been, huh? I think that's right.
So that must have been who it was.
We're just women, what do we know?
Yeah, right, right. Well, there was a time in history when women were considered property,
That's correct.
almost like not human or something,
Well, yes. And and that was why women drafted the Declaration of Sentiments and were ready to say, look, if you don't give us the right to vote and the right to participate in making the rules by which we all live, we are not going to agree to be governed by this government you've created that disrespects us in this way. And women were also asked to put aside their movement to get the vote in order to let the country concentrate on abolishing slavery, another group of people who were owned.
Right, right. Kidnapped, too, to begin with, kidnapped from their own continent that they lived on and forced to come here. And
families forced to be pulled apart.
Right, right. And just them being treated like property and everything. And then somebody had to invent the Underground Railroad so that they could be smuggled out of the into Canada and like that, to get them away from the people that owned them and everything.
And there was a very strong strain of thought that some human beings were superior to other human beings, and it was based on things like race and gender, and we know that too is still alive and well today.
Because you hear about it in the news all the time about the incidents that are going on.
And what's really interesting, when it was time for Chautauqua, for New York State men to vote on whether or not to give women the right to vote, when that vote took place, Chautauqua County men voted overwhelmingly to give women the right to vote.
Did they?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So what a shift, from that time to who we have speaking on our behalf today.
Yeah, in some ways it seems like we've gone backwards.
Not all of us have. All we have to do is change who speaks on our behalf.
Right, right. Yeah, so is there anything that you are going to be able to do to help bring more jobs to Chautauqua County?
In my background, I have run a micro-enterprise development program that was successful. We created almost 100 new micro-enterprises. They're little businesses that don't take a lot of money to get off the ground. And some of them can be home-based. Every time you do that and you have a new business operator, you have one new job. And some of those businesses actually take off and create more and more jobs, grow into what we would then call small businesses, not micro-enterprises, but small businesses. And breaking point somewhere around $35,000 in terms of an investment, a startup investment. So anything under that is a micro-enterprise. Anything above that is a small business until you get to the next level. And one of those small businesses has been growing and growing and growing, and actually I spoke with the owner lately. He would love to locate a processing facility in Chautauqua County, which would create jobs. So I'm a big proponent, because small business is the backbone of the U.S. economy. It's the backbone of the New York State economy, and it's the backbone of Chautauqua County. So in order for us to really create jobs, we need to create businesses.
Right.
And you can start small, you can start medium size, or you can start big, or or bring big businesses in. You can do it all. And all of those things create jobs. Now I know that we have job openings in this county, one of the things we have to be very vigilant about is creating the programs for young people and for people who, of any age, who want to be retrained for whatever reason, whether they've lost a job or they're retired and they want to get back into the workforce, so that they can take on these jobs that are available. Personally, I would love to raise the status of BOCES programs and technical vocational programs. So these are considered premier programs that young people want to be part of, because we need people to work in those fields. That's where one of the places we're lacking. We can use people with vocational skills, and they can earn good money.
Yeah, do you know, let me see if I can remember his last name. He was on my TV show back in the winter.
Mitt Romney.
No.
Oh.
Justin Hanift. Justin Hanift, who is one of the people that runs the Chautauqua County Education Coalition. Do you know him?
Of him, yes.
Oh, okay. He was on my program, and it sounds like they're trying to get good educations for young people so that they can get good jobs and stay in the county. And they're training them mainly in the healthcare field, and I guess it's and manufacturing, you know, are the two main things. And he was talking about these things that you can do where you where high school students can take classes in these fields while they're still in high school and earn a big chunk of their actual college degree while they're still in high school at no cost to the families, which I thought sounded really, really helpful.
Anything we can do to give our young people hope is a wonderful thing. And those kinds of programs ought to be supported in any way we can support them.
Right. Oh, and you know, I wound up, he didn't tell me this, he said that Steve Rayner had told him to call and ask to be on my TV show. And it wasn't until the next time I talked to Steve Rayner, who maybe a lot of the people watching right now know as Ken Hardley, it turns out that he's married to one of Ken Hardley's daughters. I didn't know that. He goes, oh, I heard that you had my son-in-law on one of your TV shows. And I go, okay, which guy was it? And he goes, Justin Hanift. So, so that was pretty interesting that I thought. Did you know that Steve is a psychologist?
No, I didn't.
No, you know, I think the musician thing is just kind of a hobby, but he's also a psychologist. Yeah, he's a pretty interesting person.
Yes, he is. I attended the last of the season's Rolling Hills radio program that is recorded at Chautauqua.
Yeah.
Just a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
That is a beautiful program.
Yeah, you know, they actually are showing those here at this studio on television now. They make a DVD and they bring it up here to the studio and put them on. So, but anyways, yes, anything that we can do to help people to be able to earn a living and support themselves and their families. That's a good thing.
So. Well, we ought to be really strong on equal pay for equal work as well, and we need to address the problem of high poverty in this county, which falls naturally on the backs of women between 18 and 35, 36, and their children. I mean, We need to really work hard
Yeah, we do.
to fix this.
Yeah.
And there's a lot we can do. We don't have, it's very difficult. If you don't have transportation, you're up the creek. So when people talk about, oh, well, we have to make our welfare recipients go to work. Well, how do you go to work if you don't have a car?
Right, exactly.
And there's no transportation.
I don't know if they're still doing it or not, but at one time, several years back, they were taking driver's licenses away from, like, deadbeat dads. If they were delinquent in making child support payments as punishment, I guess, but how is a person supposed to make child support payments if they don't have a car to get to work?
I don't know. That's why
Yeah,
I wonder
if
why
don't
people
have a
think the way they do.
driver's license to get to work.
I know. I'm baffled by the same questions.
You know, some of the rules, I mean, some of the laws really don't make a lot of sense.
That's why I say we need somebody who is, we need people who are more conscious of how life really works.
Right.
Helping us make these rules.
Right.
And it applies across the board. You can look at the funding of state colleges. And we have all these programs that people think, oh, that's a good idea, but the way we actually deliver the money to the schools doesn't allow the colleges and universities to, or even our school boards, public school boards, to know how, they can't manage the money because of the way it comes in. So we're handicapping all the time and expecting institutions and families to keep it all together under very difficult circumstances. There is something wrong with this.
I know. If you want people to pay the money that they owe, you've got to let them get to their jobs. You know, I mean, some people are within walking distance of their jobs.
Yes,
you know,
and lucky them.
And it wouldn't make any sense for them to drive back and forth to work. But anyways, I don't know. So. I think that we're going to move along now. Speaking of the fish, I think that what we're going to do is talk about the toxic weed killers that they want to use in Chautauqua Lake. And my husband was saying that he had read in a newspaper article that for the town of Busti, I think it was, that Dr. Rudy Mueller was the only one that voted against using these toxic weed killers.
I believe Busti was in favor of it. Lakewood, however,
is against
just voted against the use of those herbicides. The Department of Environmental Conservation for the state of New York was asked to approve something like 980 spots along Chautauqua Lake where these could be applied. And they took it way down and said, no, under 200 places might be appropriate for use. And so they really took a lot of sites off because there are some very serious concerns about the use of herbicides. There are other ways to deal with this. It may be a little more long-term use mitigation and may not give the immediate gratification that an herbicide might give to someone who is having trouble getting their boat in the water. And you know, we can understand that people who are here for the summer or live here year-round but enjoy the summers here want to be able to enjoy the summers here, and if they have a boat, if they're lucky enough to have a boat, to get that boat out into the water. We can understand that. But we cannot be short-sighted about the lake. And the lake is a long long-term environmental asset. It's worth over $1 billion to this county economically. We have to value it.
Right.
So, and one of the things I've been saying as I've been going around speaking is it's very important that we get the strongest environmental protective status possible for Chautauqua Lake. It's part of a bigger watershed. So the Chautauqua Lake watershed is part of a bigger watershed. And the bigger watershed is actually doing pretty well. But Chautauqua Lake is not, and it feeds into the bigger watershed. So this is a source pollution point, and what's around it is doing the pollution to the lake. It's been being polluted for 100 years. Right now, we are paying the price for that economically, and in terms of the needed cleanup that needs to be done. We have to think long-term about what's best for the lake, what's best for the people who are going to be living here under changing climate concerns and are going to have an awful lot to deal with just to keep their own survival and economy and everything else going after we're gone. And so what I believe what we need to do now is do the process that is maybe going to take a little longer and maybe going to disappoint a few people, but is going to be healthier for the lake and for the entire watershed, not just the Chautauqua Lake watershed, but the whole watershed, but especially the Chautauqua Lake watershed, long-term, for long-term sustainability. We want that lake to be drinking water pure.
Oh, yes, of course.
And we don't want our children or ourselves or anybody we know or love or don't know and don't love yet, we don't want them to be exposed to the stuff that's in there now and adding more stuff to it.
Right.
And we want to protect the habitat. We want the plant habitat, the fish habitat, all that, all the creatures that drink there and are on land. We need to be careful.
Well, that's a big problem with some of the things that are wrong with going wrong in the world these days, like species extinction and so forth. We're in a really bad situation right now, and you know, something needs to be done about the amount of toxins being put into the environment in general.
Did you hear recently that EPA has been very concerned about the amount of pesticides in food, especially berries? And I was with my son last night. I watch his children sometimes while he's working late, and I told him, I want you buying organic fruits and vegetables for these kids, because we just can't risk it.
No. It's my understanding that a big part of the cause of the leukemias and lymphomas is pesticides and like that.
I don't have those facts and figures, but it's not good. And women carry a bigger body burden than men because we're the ones who use personal care products, and we all carry very heavy body burdens of chemicals that are not naturally in a human body or other life form bodies.
Oh yeah, being with the Chautauqua County Vegetarian Vegan Society, and which is connected to the American Vegan Society, we're very nitpicky about what kind of cosmetics we buy, because literally anything that you put on your skin gets absorbed into your body through the pores on your skin, you know. So it's a serious problem. I read somewhere in a book called Dying to Look Good, the person that wrote the book said that that hair dyes are a big contributing factor towards non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, which is the more aggressive type of lymphoma. So you really should be careful, not just what you eat, but what you put on yourself.
Oh, yes.
And now I've even heard that most of the sunscreens on the market can actually have, they contain little particles, microscopic particles of heavy metals that can cause skin cancer.
Ooh.
So, you know, and anything that the mother puts on her body when she's pregnant or eats gets filtered through her unborn baby's body. So
Yeah, it's hard to maneuver through the world.
it is.
And take care of yourself.
We're in a very strange day and age. So anyway, let's move along to, we're down to 16 minutes, by the way.
Oh.
Just thought I'd let you know.
Yeah, well, you know, I hear some rumbling in my, I have a bag next to me.
Mm-hmm.
I hear, let me see what's going, I thought maybe it was my phone, but I don't believe it is.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see what's going on in my bag. Oh my word, how'd you get here? Look who's here.
Well, hello, what would your name be?
Her name is Frika.
Frika. That's very similar to my maiden name, which is Fricky.
Frika Fricky.
That's what your last name should be. Frika Fricky. No.
This is Frika.
Frika.
Frika. She comes on a program with me at Lakeshore Center for the Arts.
Oh.
And she's a little naughty.
Oh, you are?
Yes, she's a little naughty. But she's also very, very sweet. Yes, she's very sweet. She'd come across the table if I'd let her loose. But she has these nice long arms and these beautiful long legs. And her name is Frika, and I'm on this, it's a program at Lakeshore Center for the Arts that we call Unplugged.
Okay.
Because we're a little unplugged when we're on it, I think. But it's improv, a lot of improv, and I am Lit Lady.
Lit Lady.
Lit Lady, literature lady. So I read a story, and every once in a while I'll read a children's story.
Okay.
And the most fun is when I read a children's story and I have an audience of grown-ups mooing.
Oh.
Mooing. We had a contest. You were talking about a cow earlier. We had a contest.
Okay.
And before I started the story, I wanted to get everybody mooing. So I asked the men to moo in the audience. Come on, 1, 2, 3, moo. Nothing. They didn't say a word. So then I said, okay, women, moo. 1, 2, 3. They mooed so beautifully. It was like a song. It was just lovely, lovely, lovely. So it's a lot of fun. We have a lot of fun, and they're fun stories. And Frika sometimes comes, and she helps illustrate the stories, and she adds a little bit of drama. And last week she wasn't supposed to come. No. What did you do? Oh. Yeah, she was a little on the naughty side. But she snuck into the theater, and she was poking her head out from behind places when she wasn't supposed to be there. And she was making the audience laugh and laugh. And she was pulling all kinds of tricks, you know. She's just being a little girl, a little, you know, just being in her own world. And then every time someone would say something, what would she do? she'd hide real quick. She would just go hide so she wouldn't get caught, because I thought she was home with a sitter. No, she snuck out, walked down the street, and came to the theater. I didn't see her, but I caught her backstage, and so for the rest of the program, she stuck nearby me and just had a good time. So, what was the other question you wanted to ask me? Another serious question?
Oh, yes. Maybe Frika might know some answers here. The alternative energy situation. Now, I understand that windmills are very controversial around here. And how do you feel about them?
Well, we do have an initiative, 50 by 30, for the state of New York, 50% alternatives by the year 2030, which would be a good thing if we got close to that or met it. But the issue of windmills and communities, that's a difficult issue. So communities need to be very well prepared and shouldn't have to reinvent the wheel all the time. And I think we've done away with these pilot programs. We've moved on to something else. So whenever communities are faced with this, they really need to be fully armed with all the information and all the opportunities we can give them to participate in the public process, to make sure that those communities really and truly want these windmill developments. It's kind of a shame what happens.
Yeah, I think some people are concerned about too many trees being cut down. And another thing is they worry about birds that are migrating, flying into them and getting injured or killed.
Well, those are two legitimate concerns. I think the bird concern has been downgraded a bit, and there are other things that kill a lot more birds, and these windmills are being designed now not to do that and placed now so they're not so much in migratory paths.
Oh, I see.
But even so, it's a concern. And Arkwright, poor Arkwright, what's been done to that landscape. And more windmills are planned for that area. I'm not against windmills. I just want communities to have a very clear say in the matter and be fully informed. And I wish there were a better way for all this power that's generated to, if your community is going to pay the price for it, the community should get some benefit from it.
Oh, sure.
Not just the folks who own the land where these windmills are being placed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you, I'm hoping that we'll see more solar power in the future.
I would love to see more solar power and geothermal. And all kinds of experimental power. I would love to see that. You know, yeah, we're lucky in Westfield. We have municipal electric, so our rates are much lower. But when you're dealing with these powerful companies who have a very clear agenda, you can be up against it. I know Ripley is working on a big solar power installment.
Oh, good.
Yeah, they're pretty progressive.
Yeah, yeah, for such a small town.
Yeah, you'd be surprised what's happening in Ripley.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, what about the fossil fuel industry? I have actually researched a lot of things very thoroughly. It's my understanding that the reason that marijuana has been illegal for so many years is because not because you can get high on it, but because you can run your cars on refined hemp seed oil.
Oh, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah.
But I think that may be among the reasons that marijuana was made illegal. But
I mean, it used to be in the early years of our country. Actually, it was required for farmers to grow hemp for rope.
that's right.
And to make paper out of.
It's a very renewable resource.
It is, and it's rather than cutting down trees to make paper. The hemp grows like a weed. It's my understanding, and I'm just wondering how you feel. It's taking a while for it to be approved to be grown in New York State.
Well, I think there is an initiative, a big initiative going on now in New York State to revive hemp production. We still have not legalized the recreational use of
well, that's understandable because people might
the
drive their cars while they're impaired or something.
Well,
but
they might do that when they're drinking.
Yeah, right, exactly. So
we don't want that.
So
in any case, we don't want workers high or drunk on the job.
Right.
But on the other hand, it's part of the culture. Let's face facts.
Right.
It's a generator, a revenue generator.
Yeah, it's my understanding too that nobody has ever died from an overdose of pot. There's something about it's not possible, I guess.
Well, nothing's ever not possible, but that I suspect that's true, and I really would argue with it being a gateway drug.
Oh, of course.
And I have heard people say, oh no, that's the gateway to opioids. No, I think not. I think the opioid situation is very differently driven.
Yeah, oh yeah, definitely. I do know that it's supposed to be good if a person's getting chemotherapy treatments, and the chemotherapy treatments are causing a lot of vomiting, that using marijuana could be actually is more effective at stopping that than the pharmaceutical drugs that they use for it. And I actually lost the youngest of my two brothers to the side effects of some chemotherapy treatments that he was getting for leukemia. Yeah. So, and that was the symptom he was having, was the vomiting that caused his death, So,
well, it is known to be very effective. It's not the THC in marijuana that's removed, the piece of it that gives the high. It's other components of the plant that are kept. And it's pretty well recognized, and in fact you can buy it over the counter now here in New York.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. I have neighbors who use it for pain relief. You can get it in a capsule, you can get it in a liquid, you can rub it if you have pain in a joint. You can that was a bad use of but in a body joint, you can rub some on, and it seems to help. But so I think it's time to reconsider this whole marijuana question.
The reason that I heard that they quit growing hemp, using it for paper, and moved over to using trees instead was because at the time in our country's history, when it was being made into paper, it was the slaves that were doing all the work. It was very labor intensive.
I heard something similar.
And so when slavery was abolished, nobody else wanted to do the work, so they moved over to doing the trees. And you know, it's so much harder to replace the
Yeah,
trees.
yes.
You know, I really think that we should go back to growing it for paper making.
I used to have a dog. Before she died, she had a collar, and it was made from hemp. There are so many things. Clothing could be made from hemp.
Oh yeah, I make hemp. I make jewelry out of hemp twine.
Yeah, it's a viable industry.
It is. It really is.
And if we get over our fears and prejudices,
Yes, and you can you can't get high on the seeds, but you can use it. You can grind it up into like a flour.
Yep.
To use in baking and various other things. You can throw the seeds on your salads and like that.
Sure.
You could probably even grow sprouts, you know, on your kitchen counter.
You probably could.
You know, that you could eat in your lunch sandwiches. Okay, we are down to 1.5 minutes here.
Oh, it's gone so quickly.
It has, hasn't it? Too fast. We'll have to have you on again.
Yeah, you can come.
Yeah,
All right.
and so I want you to just put out any other information that you would like our viewing audience to know in this last little bit of time that we have left.
Well, I have a website. It's www.judynyassembly.com.
Oh.
And you can contact the campaign through there. You can read about the campaign. We're always putting new things in. You can donate to the campaign. We're going to be on a shoestring.
Oh, yes,
So I'm going to be
just
doing
imagine.
a lot of shoe leather around the county this summer and into the fall. So please check it out. And I hope I'll be a good person for Chautauqua County and you'll like me.
I will see those of you in the viewing audience in a couple more weeks.
And don't forget to come to Westfield and look at all the fish.
Yeah.